You finished dinner a few hours ago, but somewhere between 10 and 11, something pulls you toward the kitchen. Not genuine hunger, just a quietness you have learned to fill with food. A handful of crackers, a small bowl of cereal, a piece of fruit. Nothing heavy. It barely registers as a decision. And something else happened recently that you have not yet connected to that evening habit. Your cholesterol panel this year showed elevated triglycerides where there had been none before. Not alarming, just new. Your doctor adjusted your statin. Nobody asked what time you stop eating. And there's a third thing. You wake most nights between 2 and 3. Not to use the bathroom, just awake, and slightly uncomfortable in a way you cannot quite describe. You lie there long enough that you are tired the following morning despite a reasonable bedtime. The doctor has ruled out sleep apnea. Nobody mentioned dinner. These three things have never been discussed together. They should be. Because what late-night eating does to the body after 60 is not simply a calorie problem. It is a timing problem. One that touches your metabolism, your gut, your sleep architecture, and your immune system simultaneously through a single biological mechanism that most clinical conversations never reach. At around the 9-minute mark, I am going to show you something that will change the way you think about the evening snack habit entirely. Not because it is large, but because of precisely when it arrives. What the research shows about what even a modest 200-calorie evening snack does to triglycerides and next morning insulin sensitivity in adults over 60 is not proportional to its size. The mechanism that makes it damaging is not about quantity. It is about the state your body is already in when that food arrives. Stay with me for that. I have spent more than 3 decades in geriatric medicine. The combination I just described, unexplained triglyceride elevation, fragmented sleep, and a persistent late evening eating habit, is one of the most consistently overlooked clusters I encounter at this stage of life. Each element gets its own appointment. The statin is adjusted, a sleep referral is considered, a reflux medication is prescribed, and the habit that connects all three continues unchanged because no one asks about it in those terms. Let me give you the mechanism, and let me give you a way of thinking about it that will make everything in this video easier to hold together. Your body, after approximately 7 or 8 in the evening, is like a factory that has closed its gates for the night maintenance shift. The production lines have been shut down. The furnaces that ran all day to process incoming materials are being allowed to cool. The night crew, a different team entirely, has come in to run diagnostics, clear waste, repair machinery, and prepare the systems for the following morning. This is not a metaphor for laziness. It is a description of an active, essential, highly coordinated biological process that requires specific conditions to run properly. The most important condition is that no new deliveries arrive while the maintenance is underway. After 60, that factory closes its gates earlier than it did at 45. The metabolic machinery begins its shutdown sequence before 8. The maintenance crew arrives earlier. And a food delivery that arrives at 10 at night does not simply wait harmlessly in the yard until morning. It requires a response from systems that have already been powered down, and that response disrupts the maintenance work that was already in progress. Here is what that disruption looks like in 3 specific places. The first is the metabolic environment. Insulin sensitivity, the measure of how efficiently your body processes glucose from food, follows a strict circadian rhythm. It peaks in the morning and declines progressively through the afternoon and evening, reaching its lowest point between roughly 8 in the evening and 2 in the morning. This is the body's biological signal that the processing machinery is winding down for the day. When food arrives during this low sensitivity window, the body's response is physiologically different from its response to the same food at noon. More insulin is required to move glucose from the bloodstream into cells. The liver, whose role in glucose regulation is also governed by its own peripheral clock, is operating at reduced capacity. The result is that glucose stays in the bloodstream longer, insulin levels remain elevated longer, and the metabolic environment shifts toward fat storage rather than fat use. After 60, this evening insulin resistance is more pronounced than it was at 45. The morning peak is lower and the evening trough is deeper. The same piece of fruit that your metabolism would have processed efficiently at 2 in the afternoon is arriving, at 10 at night, at a factory whose glucose processing machinery is running in low power mode, and the material that cannot be processed immediately is redirected toward triglyceride synthesis, toward fat storage, toward an accumulation that shows up on your next blood panel, as a number your doctor did not expect. This is why triglycerides specifically rise with late eating. Not because the food itself is fatty, but because unprocessed glucose in an insulin-resistant evening environment is converted to triglycerides by a liver that is no longer equipped to handle it any other way. The factory does not discard the shipment. It stores it, in the form of fat, in the blood. Here is the connection that matters even more than the triglycerides. And this is the one that connects directly to the gut symptoms that most people over 60 have learned to manage rather than investigate. The second disruption is in the gut's own biological clock. Your gut is not simply a passive tube that processes whatever arrives. It has its own peripheral clock, a set of timing genes in the cells lining the intestinal wall that coordinate when the gut is in digestive mode and when it is in repair mode. During the day, the gut is in production mode, absorbing nutrients, maintaining the mucus lining, managing the microbiome's composition actively. From approximately 8 in the evening, the gut transitions to maintenance mode, repairing the tight junctions between intestinal cells, clearing damaged cells, allowing the microbiome to rest in the patterns it has evolved to follow. The gut microbiome, the community of bacteria living in your intestine, also follows a circadian rhythm. Different bacterial species are dominant at different times of day. At night, the species responsible for producing anti-inflammatory short-chain fatty acids, for maintaining the gut lining, and for running the immune calibration that keeps systemic inflammation in check, are supposed to be active in their maintenance patterns. When food arrives late, it feeds bacterial populations out of sequence with their biological cycle. It disrupts the dominance patterns. Over time, late eating has been shown to reduce microbiome diversity, increase the proportion of pro-inflammatory bacterial species, and accelerate the loosening of tight junctions in the gut wall. The same intestinal permeability that allows inflammatory particles to enter the bloodstream. After 60, the gut lining is already more permeable than it was at 40. The tight junctions are naturally less robust with age. Late eating does not create this problem, but it accelerates it. The maintenance crew that would repair the gaps is being interrupted by a delivery they were not expecting and are not equipped to handle at that hour. Now, the third disruption, and this is the one that is most immediately felt and most consistently misattributed. The third disruption is sleep architecture. Deep sleep, the slow wave stage where physical repair, immune maintenance, memory consolidation, and brain waste clearance all occur, requires two specific biological conditions to initiate and sustain. The first is a drop in core body temperature of approximately 1 degree. The second is stable blood glucose, neither spiking nor crashing, through the first half of the night. Late eating disrupts both conditions simultaneously. Digestion generates heat. The metabolic work of processing a meal raises core body temperature at precisely the moment the body needs it to fall. The temperature drop that should signal the brain to deepen into slow-wave sleep is delayed, sometimes by an hour or more, depending on the size and timing of the meal. Less time in deep sleep, less physical repair, less immune maintenance, less brain waste clearance. And separately, the glucose from a late meal, processed inefficiently in the insulin-resistant evening environment, creates a blood sugar arc through the night. Glucose rises after the meal. Insulin responds. Glucose drops. If that drop is significant enough, which it is more likely to be after 60, when metabolic regulation is less precise, the body's stress response activates, releasing adrenaline and cortisol to raise blood sugar. That stress response is a light switch. It pulls you from deep sleep into shallow sleep or waking. Not to the bathroom, just awake. At 2 in the morning, uncomfortable and unable to place why. Now, the 9-minute mark. The specific part of this picture I want to show you. The one that stops most people when they hear it. Research published in 2019 and replicated in subsequent studies on adults over 60 specifically examined the metabolic impact of a modest late evening snack, approximately 200 calories, the kind of thing most people would describe as barely eating, a piece of fruit or a small bowl of cereal, consumed after 9 in the evening. Compared to a control group who did not eat after 7, the late snack group showed significantly elevated fasting triglycerides the following morning, measurably impaired insulin sensitivity in the morning glucose test, and reduced slow-wave sleep duration across the measurement night. 200 calories, a piece of fruit, consumed in what most people consider a genuinely harmless way. The size of the delivery did not matter. The state of the factory when it arrived was the variable. The metabolic machinery was already shut down. The maintenance crew was already at work. The shipment created consequences that a delivery of identical size at 1 in the afternoon would not have produced. After 60, this sensitivity to late caloric delivery is greater, not lesser. The factory closes earlier. The maintenance crew is working on a system with more to repair, and the cost of an interruption, measured in triglycerides, in lost slow-wave sleep, in gut lining integrity, is higher per calorie than it has ever been. A patient of mine, a retired headmaster, early 70s, a man who by any reasonable account managed his health carefully, came to me not for his cholesterol, which had been well controlled for years, but because his most recent panel had shown a significant rise in triglycerides that his cardiologist had not expected and had responded to by increasing his statin dose. He also mentioned, almost as an aside, that he had been sleeping poorly for about 8 months, waking in the early hours, lying awake for 40 minutes, getting back to sleep shallowly. His GP had attributed this to age and prostate function, both of which had been assessed and found unremarkable. Nobody had asked what time he ate. I did. He ate dinner at 6:30. He went to bed at 11. Between 9 and 10:30, while watching television, he described a reliable habit of a small snack, sometimes a few biscuits, sometimes a bowl of cereal, sometimes fruit and yogurt. He did not consider this a meal. He did not consider it relevant to either his cholesterol or his sleep. It was simply what the evening contained. His eating window ran from 7 in the morning to 10:30 at night. 15 and a half hours. The 3 to 4 hours before bed were consistently fed. When his eating window was closed at 7 in the evening, dinner remained exactly as it was, timing and content unchanged. Only the evening snack was removed and replaced with a non-caffeinated herbal tea. His sleep pattern began shifting within 3 weeks. The early morning waking reduced in frequency and then largely stopped. At 10 weeks, his fasting triglycerides had fallen from their elevated level to within normal range without any change to his statin dose. His cardiologist, reviewing the repeat panel, asked what dietary change he had made. He had made none. He had made a timing change. Same man, same dinner, same statin. Closed the evening eating window by 3.5 hours. Different panel, different nights. Here is what I want you to carry from this video into your next appointment. 3 specific steps, each one actionable without waiting. The first, bring this question to your GP at your next appointment and use these exact words. I have been reading about late-night eating and its effect on triglycerides and sleep in adults over 60. Given my current medications and my sleep pattern, what time do you recommend my eating window closes each evening? That question does 3 things at once. It connects your triglyceride conversation, your sleep conversation, and your medication timing conversation into a single clinical frame. It is a question most clinicians at this stage will welcome, because it gives them an intervention that costs nothing. The second, for the next 14 days, move your last food of the day to no later than 7 in the evening, or if your dinner is currently late, to at minimum 3 hours before your actual bedtime. Do not change what you eat at dinner. Do not reduce portions. Change only the time at which eating stops. Make a note on the mornings after each of the first 14 days of how many times you woke during the night. The correlation that will emerge is the most useful piece of evidence you can bring to your next appointment. The third, replace the evening snack habit, whatever form it takes, with a non-caffeinated herbal tea. Chamomile, peppermint, or ginger are all appropriate. This does 2 things simultaneously. It substitutes the physical and psychological pattern of the evening habit with a non-eating version of it, and these specific herbs have documented gut-calming effects at the end of the digestive day that support, rather than disrupt, the gut's transition to maintenance mode. Bring this to your pharmacist and ask, are there any interactions between my current evening medications and chamomile or ginger tea? Most pharmacists will confirm there are none for standard medications, but the question is worth asking. Let me bring you back to where this began. The kitchen at 10 at night, the handful of crackers, the small bowl that barely registered as a decision, the triglyceride number your doctor did not expect, the 2 o'clock waking that nobody has fully explained. The factory has closed its gates. The maintenance crew is already at work on the most important repair cycles your body runs. The delivery that arrives after the gates close does not wait harmlessly until morning. It interrupts the maintenance crew, It sits unprocessed in the wrong metabolic environment. And the cost, measured in a blood panel in stolen sleep, in a gut lining that repairs less efficiently each time it is interrupted, is not proportional to the size of the delivery. The habit is small. The mechanism it triggers is not. Over the next 7 days, note 2 things each evening: what time you eat your last food, and how many times you wake during the night. Write both down each morning. Do not change the habit yet, only observe it. Because next week, I am going to show you something specific about which types of food cause the most metabolic damage when eaten late. And the ranking will surprise you. One of the most harmful late-night foods is also one of the most widely recommended healthy snacks for seniors. And I am going to show you the 2-hour rule that the research identifies as the minimum buffer between your last food and bedtime to prevent triglyceride accumulation and protect slow-wave sleep. Your 7 days of data will tell you exactly how far your current habit sits from that line, and what closing that gap could mean for your next panel. Come back with your numbers. What I show you next week will make them mean something precise. One important note before you go. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for the advice of your personal physician. Please do not stop or change any medication, including statins or any other evening prescription, without first speaking to the doctor responsible for your care. If you manage blood sugar with medication, please discuss any change to your eating window with your doctor before implementing it, as eating timing directly affects blood glucose patterns in ways that require clinical supervision. The goal of this video is to give you a clearer picture of what your body is navigating after 60, and better questions to bring to the people who can act on them with you. That is where the real change begins.